Good evening and welcome. If there is a college student in your life, young or old, then you know the problem with college for most people isn't the work as much as it is the cost. The total student debt load in the U.S. now stands at an alarming $1 trillion. That's more than credit card debt or auto loans. And these so-called for-profit colleges account for a growing chunk of that debt. You've seen the commercials for them. You can probably name a few of them. And they can be a godsend, especially for lower-income students, because they offer convenience and job skills many traditional colleges don't. But as Natalie Morales reports tonight, when their students default on their loans, it's a costly lesson not just for the students, but also for U.S. taxpayers.
Ashley Wood knew she wanted to be a graphic artist. So when she graduated from high school, she began researching colleges and clicked on an ad for the Art Institute of Las Vegas. Within hours, she says, she got a call from an admissions counselor.
They told me it was the top-notch school. They offered classes when I could work in the day and go to school at night. They just made their school sound like amazing. It sounded amazing.
She visited the campus the next day, where a recruiter quickly signed her up. By that night, Ashley was sitting in her first class.
They didn't ask for portfolio. They didn't even ask for high school transcript or degree, diploma of any kind.
No.
But she says they did ask her how she'd pay for school and helped her get financial aid. That same night, she says they walked her through the application process to take out $68,000 in student loans for her 4-year degree. She ended up taking out 2 additional loans for tuition and expenses for Art Institute programs abroad. And 6 years later,
I'll be paying just interest for the rest of my life.
Her debt ballooned to $145,000 due to interest rates as high as 12%, debt she can hardly afford.
I could never get out another loan if I tried. I mean, I was 20 years old owing $1,000 a month.
And she's not the only one. Out of the roughly 80,000 students attending art institutes, hundreds have posted similar stories online, including Rick Wolf.
It was very vague.
He says he too felt fast-tracked through a financial aid process he never really understood, though the Art Institute says it discloses loan information on its websites. Rick's not even sure exactly how much he owes for his 2-year degree, but says it's at least $60,000.
Do you have the means to pay for that?
No, I absolutely do not. I think their bread and butter is really people such as myself who perhaps don't have the greatest understanding going in of how this whole system works.
The student loan system is one that many say is broken. College students saddled with huge amounts of debt. In fact, nationwide student loan debt is now at a record high, over $1 trillion. It's a problem so big it's drawing scrutiny at colleges across the country. But nowhere has it been as intense as at schools like the ones that Ashley and Rick attended, called for-profit colleges.
About 3 million students attend for-profit colleges, schools run like businesses and backed by publicly traded companies like Goldman Sachs, Washington Post Company, and Apollo Group, owner of the University of Phoenix, which has sponsored NBC's Education Nation. It's a $30 billion a year industry, with as much as 90% of its revenue coming from student loans and grants. That's because the colleges cater mostly to low-income students and inform those students about financial aid. The colleges appeal to people because of their flexibility. They hold classes both day and night, online and on campus. And they offer degrees in specialized fields like culinary arts and fashion design, as well as doctorate programs in law and psychology. Glossy TV commercials tout their programs and feature successful graduates, from business leaders to Pulitzer Prize winners and Top Chef contestants. But what the ads don't highlight is this: controversy over the college's mission. Is it to educate students or turn a profit for its shareholders? The colleges say both. Critics disagree.
The students are just a conduit for federal money.
Suzanne Lawrence is a former recruiter for EDMC, Education Management Corporation, the company that owns the Art Institutes. She worked there for 6 months and says her job was to sign up as many students as possible and send them directly to financial aid, where the college gets the tuition and the student gets the bill. And if the student defaults, it's taxpayers who pick up the tab. And nowhere do students default on their loans more than at for-profit colleges.
They're simply siphoning money from the taxpayers and from the federal government, siphoning them through these students, and on the way ruining these students' credit, ruining their lives, and filtering that money straight into their stockholders' pockets.
Though some of the colleges dispute the numbers, the Department of Education says students at for-profit colleges represent about 10% of college students nationwide. Yet they take out about 25% of all student loans and grants. And of all the students across the country who default on their loans, nearly half come from for-profit colleges.
You want to keep them on the hook, get as much money out of them as you can.
Kathleen Biddle is another former recruiter for EDMC who says she too was told to boost the bottom line by packing the schools full of students regardless of their qualifications. Both women left EDMC of their own accord.
What were you doing day in and day out?
Telemarketing. We called phone numbers all day long, hoping for someone to pick up the phone and talk with us. They wanted anybody with a pulse and a Pell. You know, if you can.
Is that what they actually said?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you mean by a pulse and a Pell?
If you qualify for the Pell Grant and you're alive, you're perfect fodder for their school.
A Pell Grant is money the U.S. government gives to low-income students, a population EDMC and other colleges like them tend to focus on. In fact, for-profit colleges received 32% of all Pell Grants in 2010. There have also been disturbing allegations that some of these colleges have aggressively recruited military veterans because their tuition is paid for by the GI Bill. Reports that prompted President Obama to speak out in April.
But as some of your comrades have discovered, sometimes you're dealing with folks who aren't interested in helping you. They're not interested in helping you find the best program. They are interested in getting the money.
Many of these for-profit schools are making huge profits, not based on the fact of competition, but on the fact that they get free government money, free from the taxpayers. Alarm bells go off when you start seeing that. We have the data, we have the facts to show.
For the past 3 years, Democratic Senator Tom Harkin, chairman of the Senate Education Committee, has been investigating the industry. A harsh critic, he says students at for-profit colleges take out more student loans, default more often, and have a higher rate of unemployment than students at traditional schools. A December 2011 report by the GAO confirmed his findings.
The for-profit schools, because of their business model, target low-income people. Because the lower your income, the more Pell Grants you get, and the more student loan you're eligible for. So it's in your business interest to go after those poor students.
But it is a business, and the business is to make profit. That's what for-profit is about.
And my business is to protect the taxpayers of America and to try to protect the students, to let them know what they're up against.
Some for-profit executives acknowledge their students are more likely to default, but they say it's because they serve a low-income population that is underserved by traditional colleges. They also say many students take out loans for expenses beyond tuition and can't stop students from that overborrowing.
Do you think it's appropriate to take a huge block of low-income people and ignore them, say to them, your dream to get an education and a good job really isn't important to anybody? It is.
Bonnie Campbell is a spokesperson for EDMC. She's a former Attorney General for the state of Iowa and former member of the state's Board of Regents that oversees its education system.
Would you agree the practice of giving student loans to people who don't really have much promise to pay them back or can't afford them, is that unethical?
They are receiving something of value. They're receiving an education.
Here's what we've heard, a commonly used phrase amongst former associate directors of admissions, pulse and a Pell. Have you heard that phrase?
No, and it would never be condoned by EDMC.
Campbell says EDMC does reach out to military veterans, but to enrich their lives, not for the federal tuition money. And she points out that giving students a good education is in the company's best interest.
If you're not educating students properly, if you're not placing them in jobs, you won't make a profit.
EDMC says the vast majority of its graduates, 82%, do find jobs in their field, and many go on to great success. Brian Ward, owner of Pittsburgh design agency Giant Ideas, is an Art Institute graduate from 1987.
Everything that I learned while I was here, every single class that I had, applied to the jobs that I got when I got out of school.
But is it possible, I mean, you graduated in 1987, is it possible that things have changed, that the story is different?
I would think that it is. I mean, I can't speak to that specifically, but I think the world has changed, obviously. And but my experience has been recent. My son is expecting to attend the Art Institute. I would in no way send my 18-year-old son to a school where I felt that he would not get a proper education.
Though Ashley Wood did get a design job after completing her studies, she's still not sure it was worth the steep price tag.
I feel like I didn't get the best education, and I don't want to tell anyone that because I owe $145,000 for this degree.
And you don't even feel like you can get your head above it
I
all?
honestly believe if I pay them what they're asking, my loan literally will never be paid off.
With all the brand names in this business, why the focus on EDMC?
Well, it is one of the biggest in the industry, and also it is the subject of a Department of Justice lawsuit in which they're questioning how they received $11 billion worth of federal funds. Now, at issue, the government claims in the past that EDMC violated the law in the way it compensated its employees who recruited students. EDMC strongly disputes these allegations. They say they've been in compliance with the law then and are now, and they're vigorously defending the lawsuit.
And how goes the fight for student loan debt reform?
Well, as you know, there's been a lot of movement in Congress and at the White House. They are trying to impose some reforms in the coming years, but it is a national crisis, as you said in the beginning of the story. This has reached, we are surpassed the $1 trillion mark, and that is more than credit card loan and auto loan debt right now. But in terms of reform, there's talk about forgiveness, perhaps, of debt in 20 years or so after a student has carried that debt for 20 years. But not much progress has been made on that front.
Natalie Morales, who has to be on the air in just a couple hours tomorrow morning. Natalie, thanks for stopping by.
All right,
Appreciate your reporting.
Appreciate it.